Hello, everyone. Welcome back to On Purpose, the #1 health podcast in the world because of each and every single one of you. Thank you so much for taking out time out of your day, out of your evening to be here, to learn and grow and advance your thinking. And like you know, every week I try and find guests that I believe are going to ask us thought-provoking questions, give us deeper insights to ourselves, and give us so much experience and abundance and wealth of insight to learn from so that we can learn from their lives, their mistakes, their failures, their successes, and most of all, their wisdom. And today's guest is someone that I've been really blown away by. I've met him for the first time this week, but he just has this natural humility, his natural grace. He's extremely kind-hearted. And it really blows me away when extremely successful individuals are so deeply, genuinely grounded and wanting to do incredible things for the world. So as you know, this week, I've been with the Arthur Blank Family Foundation. We've been at the West Creek Ranch here in Montana, and we've been discussing the state of well-being in America. And the person who's put this on is Arthur Blank himself, who is the best known as the co-founder of the Home Depot and was named by Forbes as one of the world's 100 greatest living business minds and Sports Business Journal's most 50 influential people in sports for the past 3 years. His business portfolio currently includes the NFL's Atlanta Falcons, MLS Atlanta United, the Retail PGA Tour Superstore, the Arthur M. Blank Family Foundation, and many, many more ventures. Arthur, I'm so grateful, honored, and humbled that you're doing this. Thank you for being here.
Well, it's great to be with you. As I said to you the other night, I mean, you're the last person I see when I go to bed. And it's always very warming to hear your counsel and your wisdom. So thank you for sharing that with all of us. I appreciate it.
No, thank you so much. I was so touched to hear that you'd been watching my videos without me even knowing.
I have been. I love them all. The great stories. And kind of like you said the other day, we're talking about Albert Einstein, how the ability to take something that's very complex and has a lot of sides and edges to it and make it to where it's digestible and understandable by the majority of people. And I think that's a powerful asset that you have. And one that I try to remember as well, to try to make things a little bit easier for people to understand, and therefore, get through the points you're trying to make. You do it well, very well.
Thank you so much. That means so much to me coming from you. And we're so happy and grateful to be in this incredible ranch this week, your space here in Montana. We have this incredible view, and even more amazing is the people that you've gathered and your team has gathered for this such an important conversation and cause.
Yeah.
Could you tell us about where this idea for this week came for you and what the purpose was from your perspective? Well,
I think it was you were born out of a lot of years of my journey in terms of wellness and well-being, and I was a very competitive runner for many years of my life, and that that was great, but we transitioned out of that, and I do a variety of other things to keep myself physically and mentally in shape now, but we're living in very troubled times, and I'm talking about really on a global basis, nationally as well as globally. And despite our GDP, which we discussed the other day, as not being the real measure of happiness in a country, despite the growth of that, we've got a lot of issues that young people and older people are all struggling with. The fact that you met Laurie Santos from Yale University, and a quarter of the student body of Yale, 318 years old, was taking this course every year on how to deal with positive growth, how to deal with the stress in your life, et cetera. At Harvard, they have over 1,000 students every semester do a similar. So the reality is, it's not only with folks my age that are, why is the suicide rate double since 1996, 30%, I should say. But the young people today, thank heavens, are questioning themselves. What is my purpose? What's my purpose myself? What's my purpose in serving humanity? What's my purpose in what I'm doing? How do I connect all these dots in my life journey together? And so I think the idea was to bring together the best, the brightest, and the smartest. We have them all, starting with you, and many others that have incredible backgrounds and histories, and bring such knowledge and wisdom to the room, And the idea was to bring together for us as a funder and other funders as well, are there ways that we can help move the ball down the field, to use, either of my football teams, American football or soccer as an analogy, but is there ways that we can put our shoulder to the wheel and do more than what is currently being done? Is there ways we can assist? And we do that within our own businesses, and we can talk about that later if you like. But beyond that, what's the scale? What's the impact? We've talked about that. Lord knows that if we make a difference in one person's life, that's a huge journey by itself. But reality is that these issues are of such scale, not only nationally but internationally, as we've heard from Dan Buettner, Blue Zones, and
Ben Lido,
Bob Walding,
yes.
and Bob Walding from Harvard. I mean, these issues are being questioned, throughout the world. So they're big time concerns that we have to face.
Yeah, absolutely. And when I first received the invite and saw what the conversation was, I was just so happy and in awe that this was taking place.
Yeah.
I just thought, wow, there's someone out there who is so deeply invested and seems so genuinely caring about what the challenges of the world are. And then when I looked at the list of people coming, I was just like, wow, this can be so exciting for me, because I'll have my notebook out.
Right.
And I've learned so much this week.
Yeah.
So thank you again. And I want to help my audience understand your backstory, because I think that's what really shows where people's purpose comes from.
Right.
It's very easy to look at you. We're sitting in this beautiful West Creek
yeah,
Ranch today.
Right, yeah.
It's, this beautiful property here, but you actually grew up in a 1-bedroom apartment.
I did.
Queens.
Right.
And you didn't move out until you went to college and didn't live in a home till age 32.
Right, that's correct, yeah.
And so tell us about how formative that experience was and what you learned from it.
Well, I think it was very important in my own life. My father was a pharmacist, but I lost him when I was 15. He was 44 at the time, very young age. My mother was 37. She took over my dad's business and ran it. But, we didn't have very much. I mean, as I said, it was a 1-bedroom apartment shared by all 4 of us. We had a single bathroom. I mean, we were living in a very, very modest way. And but the one thing I remember clearly about my mother is that it was never about money. It was always about making a difference and trying to give back and trying to be involved in the community, et cetera. I mean, I wear this bracelet that I had made from our book. It's inscribed. You can't see it on here, but I wear one every day. It matches the color of what I'm wearing. I try to, but it says you only pass through once, make a difference. So, and that was the title of the book that she wrote. So I think that became ingrained in me, the notion of trying to make a difference, giving back, being connected to others in the community, and what have you. And we were not in a position to write checks then, but, writing checks is great, but doing the work itself and getting connected to the individuals that you're trying to serve is really the most rewarding part of philanthropy in my view. It makes it all come to life, makes it all real, gives it more purpose than just sitting and writing checks. Checks are important. Resources are important to make things happen and bring scale. But I think it's important to have that background. That, I would say, part of it, and my faith. I'm Jewish, and one of the expressions in Judaism is tikkun olam, which means to repair the world. Or tzedakah, giving and participating. So those were ingrained in me, even though when I went to services, you don't think you absorb all that. You obviously did, became a monk at 18, but a lot of the congregational meetings I went to, et cetera, I wasn't sure exactly but I was absorbing more so than I even really thought. So I think those things are very important in terms of my childhood.
Yeah, that's incredible. And regardless of how little you had,
Yep.
your mother was always trying to find time and energy to give to the community in different ways.
Right.
I think those are really powerful messages.
Yeah, and I think when I bought my first home, it was $32,000. I was 32 years old. I remember telling my wife then, I said, "Look, I'm not going to embarrass us. I'll pay off the mortgage. I'll keep us current. Don't worry about that. I'll pay the bills, but we're never going to pay this mortgage off completely. I just, there's no way, So obviously that part of my life has changed. But remembering that and remembering that experience and what it meant to not have the kind of financial success that we have today, going back to those days, I think was a very important part of my own molding, if you will.
Absolutely. I think perspective is so important. I remember when I was 9 years old, I visited India for the first time, and my father took me to the home that he grew up in. And he grew up in an area where they shared a bathroom with 30 other families.
Yeah.
His home was as big as this room, and that had 7 people living in this much space. And when I went outside, there were like bats and cockroaches and all this kind of stuff. And I was just like, I couldn't believe that that's where my dad grew up.
Yeah.
And compared to, we didn't grow up in a huge house in England, but compared to his home, our home was huge.
Yeah.
And so for me, it was so important, I feel, at 9 years old to see that.
Right.
Because it started making me feel grateful for what I did have rather than being ungrateful for what I didn't have.
Yeah, and I think, just as your journey brought you at some point at age 18, I think it was, when you decided to, go on the journey of becoming a monk, you're affected by your background, your history, all the connecting points in your life. And sometimes they don't all seem to add up right at the moment, but there's a big puzzle going on in your head and in your heart and in your spirit that actually brings those things together. And it's, that moment of saying, aha, this is my purpose. This is really what I want to do. I feel at peace with this. I want to, go as far as I can down this road, take others with me, travel with others, et cetera. So I think it's been beautiful from my standpoint.
Yeah. And tell us how then 5 years later at 37, you go from feeling tired of working at a regional hardware store to then going on to build the biggest. What does that process of thinking about it, making it happen, pushing forward look like?
Well, we really weren't tired of doing it. It was a company that was called Handy Dan Home Improvement Centers, which was then the most successful home improvement center company chain in the United States, but it was owned by a larger company that was in financial difficulty. So when Bernie and I, my partner who co-founded Home Depot, we got fired actually. So it wasn't like, well, let's, it was a lot of political reasons, and that's a whole nother story. But beyond that, it was our chance really to live our lives over again from a business standpoint. And although those stores were the best run in the United States, we felt if we ever had to compete with a large, no-frills, down-market warehouse store, we really couldn't do it. So we said if we couldn't do that, and we were running the best company in that sector that time, let's try to develop that and go with that. And that was the birth of Home Depot, and started in 78. First stores were in 79. It's a long story. When I left 23 years later, it was the second largest retailer in the world, second only to Walmart, which is a great company. And they have one of their senior executives here this week as well, and trying to understand well-being and wellness and how that relates to the associates that they have. And I don't even know what their number is today. It's probably about 1.5 million, maybe more than that. It's mind-boggling.
Wow, that's insane.
Yeah.
What gave you, what I'm really interested in, Arthur, is that what gave you the courage and risk-taking after being fired at the age of 37 to do that? Because I think today, and it's interesting because I was sitting yesterday at a table with Laurie, with Robert, and we were discussing this, and what they were sharing with me is that so many students today at some of the best institutions in the world, and all institutions in the world, are so scared of doing anything that isn't the path. And what I mean by the path is they believe that they go to Yale or Harvard, they continue and they have to get a job in what they're studying right now, and that they have to live that very narrow line. And they said, in their words, they know some of their students are doing things they hate just because it's the path. Where did you feel the confidence and the risk-taking approach to try something new? And how can our audience and listeners today feel that they're not old? Because today people think they're old at 25. And we think we're old at 28 to try something new.
I got married at 23 first time, and I said, oh God, this is 23 years old. I need to get married. Today, the kids are getting married much later. But in any event, I think in my own case, probably came from the experience that my father passing away at an early age, being an entrepreneur. He was working as a pharmacist. He left several years before he passed away, started his own wholesale drug company across America, drugstores, hospitals, nursing homes, et cetera. And then when he passed away, my mother took that business over. So I had all these role models in my family of, not giving up, of trying something new, extending yourself, going on that journey. I've been connected with Outward Bound for probably 40 years now, and their slogan is to serve, to strive, and not to yield. And so I very much believe in that, and the notion that we all can do more than what we thought we were capable of doing. And it doesn't mean you do it without, safety nets around you, but but you can do more than what you thought. So I would encourage, and I do encourage people to, as Dr. Dwyer would say, to find the music within you and make sure it gets played. So I think, a lot of us have to find that, that music, if you will, that passion, that point of physical, mental, spiritual connection that makes us feel we're not getting up to work today. We're getting up to not have fun, but to do God's work, do our work, do work with purpose, service to others, etc. So I think, you try to find, and I encourage young people today to try to find. Don't worry about making money. If you're good at what you're doing, you're going to be fine. And money is really not the main attribute to happiness, as you well know. But I think doing what you find a passion for, serving others in some capacity, and being part of the greater community, not just of your family, which is obviously critical, but of humanity, brings you the joy and peace. And I think if you can find a business that in one form or another provides that service, I think you create a company. Expression I use to our managers that you want our associates to feel this company is really worthy of your life. I don't mean that in disrespect to religion or whatever else it may be, but they give you 8, 10, 12 hours a day, whatever it may be, but you want them to come to work and not have to think of it as work. Think of it as, this is part of my mission. I love the values of this organization. I believe in them. I want to stand for them. I want to participate in them. I want to help articulate them. I want to help share them with others as they join our businesses. And I think that passion, and that commitment is what will bring a greater sense of joy. And hopefully, I'm thrilled really with Bob Walding here and Laurie Santos here as best examples, and many other universities. But this tremendous thirst that our young people have, who at the end of the day really are our future. The young people have to find a greater purpose, find themselves personally, and then find a greater connection to others in their community and humanity is something that I applaud. And that's why your work is so important, because you're part of the voices that young people everybody's listening to. I'm 76, so I'm not young, but everybody is listening to today, and trying to get some better guidance, broader guidance, more spiritual guidance, connecting guidance to everything inside of themselves than they would have had otherwise. So, I'm very optimistic about the direction that we're going in. But it's not going to happen by itself. It's not going to change by itself. We need people like yourself, Jay, and all the people in the other rooms that are doing incredible work and making sure that those messages get expanded, and we're touching more and more people, and find ways to bring that message of scale. And I think it's one that people, when somebody has that feeling that I'm not really, this is purpose to me. And in the true sense of the word, what I'm doing every day has purpose. It's like these, young men you have here, we're recording this. I assume, they love working with you, but they probably love, hearing some of these stories, and every day they exposed to, some other thoughts that help them enrich their own mind and their own thoughts. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And when I hear you speak from the first day when you led the introduction to even now, the words like purpose and values and spirit, they're so deeply embedded in who you are. And one of the things I loved, and we'll try and get a slide to put it onto the video version, but when you first started speaking, you showed us the 2 value diagrams that you have. Mm-hmm. And one thing I loved is that there was an upside down pyramid.
Right.
And on the upside down pyramid, the person at the bottom of the pyramid was Arthur.
It was me. Right.
And I loved that because, and at the top was customers.
Right.
And then you had the other circular one with innovation and all these other aspects of values. I'd love for you to talk through some of those.
Sure.
Because I believe that we hear a lot of people say this stuff.
Right, I know.
And you've probably heard it more than I have. Mm-hmm. But from spending a bit of time with you and seeing the success of what you've done, it seems like you've actually been able to really do it.
Right, yeah.
Please share with us some of those values and how you constructed them specifically, and where that upside down pyramid and you at the bottom idea came from.
Yeah. So I think, Jay, all of our businesses, regardless of their exactly what they're doing, you described them all well earlier, all at incredibly high very high success portfolio and results, they're all based on the same set of values. And the same set of values is a wheel of six, if you will, but they all have to do with relationships, all have to do with community, all have to do with respect, all have to do with giving back. None of those key values have anything to do with, what's our maximum revenue, what's our rate of profitability, what's our return on sales, et cetera. It's all has to do with behavior and how we treat the people that we're serving. So whether we're serving guests here at Mountain Sky or at West Creek, or whether we're serving customers in our PGA business, or whether we're serving fans in our Atlanta Falcons or Atlanta United in our stadium, which has been voted #1 stadium in the country the last 2 years, little plug. But everything we do is all about service to others. So, we know if we do the right things for the right reasons in terms of the tactical decisions, but if we have this welcoming home, this welcoming feeling where we're more concerned about who we're serving than about ourselves, that comes across with a sense of trust and caring. So an example would be, just to demonstrate that, in the National Football League, 32 teams, the last 2 years, the Atlanta Falcons were voted #1 in the NFL for fan experience. Major League Soccer, we're at 24 teams. We're ranked #1 in Major League Soccer in terms of fan experience. And a lot of it has to do with a lot of different things in food and beverage and our unique strategy in that regard, but in the setting in the stadium. But beyond that, it has to do with the fact that every single person in any of these venues that we're talking about feels like they're an honored guest, feels like they are, the reason we're there is to serve them. And I would say to you, our associates are compensated well. But having said that, their greatest compensation, in my view, is that, they're seeing people smile every day. They're making people's dreams come true. They're making people's problems go away, this sense of community, all of these things that we share and talk about. They love all that. So our associates feel like, I may have a tough day at home or a tough day, maybe when they come into work though, and they're confusing work with play, and they're making the opportunity to serve right there is very powerful in terms of enriching their own experience. So that's a key driver in everything that we do. We also feel strongly in community and giving back, and we do that with the service and the businesses themselves. But we do it in a broader sense in terms of our own philanthropy, our family foundations, $400 million since 1995, and that'll probably, double and triple in the next 10 years. And then each of our businesses has an associate-led fund to themselves, which is very, very significant in dollars. But the beauty of that is that these are not trained philanthropists. They're just associates. They're not executives necessarily. They're trained, to how to go through evaluations, et cetera. They make the decisions. They're closest to the people they're serving. They understand the communities they're living in. They understand their industries incredibly well. And so they make decisions about, how much we're going to allocate in certain areas. And they do that work, and we support them. We don't guide them. We just, we give them X amount of dollars and they take care of it. The beauty of that is that the associates feel a tremendous sense of pride then, not just in their work, quote unquote, which is having purpose in terms of serving others, but also they're physically part of going out and doing site visits in a variety of settings and making decisions about, we've been blessed here, and how do we help others? How do we do this work and expand it? So to have that pride, that gives the associates even more purpose and more sense of that. And I've publicly said, from my standpoint, look, whatever's left over, 98% of my state is going to be going back through philanthropy, family foundation, my kids' foundations, these associate-led foundations, because I don't need any more clothing. I don't need any more of anything. I need more, growth myself, but I want to see, the world a better place than it is currently today, and be part of that. And our associates feel that way. So the upside down pyramid, if you will, with guests, customers, fans on top and me on the bottom, reinforces the message that the people that are most important are the people that we're serving. It's not bunch of words. And we embody that. We tell stories around that, et cetera. And then we have our frontline associates who are the next ones that are touching and feeling all of our guests or our fans, customers. And then, it's my job and other associates at the leadership level to provide the environment to make sure they have the resources, to make sure they have the strategy, to make sure that we create goals for them that are reasonable, et cetera, and give them support. So, and your question, which is probably the best question that as a business person you ask, is that, often an entrepreneur has a vision and it's successful, but once they try to expand it, it becomes not successful. So, at Home Depot, we struggled with that as well. And we had 4 stores. I remember meeting with a gentleman from Goldman Sachs, who was the most highly regarded banker on Wall Street in the retail space. And he sat down with me at lunch. He said, well, you have these 4 stores, in Atlanta, they're very successful, and you have a unique culture. But, he didn't ask me a question. I was only 37, so I was like, woo, meeting with this guy was a really big deal. So he said, as you expand, you're not going to be able to maintain this culture. You're just not going to be able to do it. He said, because you guys are so physically involved in the level of training, the level of commitment, the level of their associates understanding your viewpoints on all this. So it was troubling coming from him because we had aspirations to become a national company, which obviously with 2,200 stores now and stores in Mexico, Canada, and U.S., it's amazing story. But the key to that was not what's on a piece of paper, not the 6 core values that we live. It was not really the inverted triangle, but the ability to make sure that what we would term, in case of Home Depot, was an orange apron, so it was orange, a lot of orange in our business, that our associates, bled orange, if you will. And what that means is that they understood the values. We didn't make them write them down. We didn't make them, they didn't know to say them exactly in this order, but did they live them? Could they articulate them in whatever words they wanted to, but most importantly, could they live them? And so we became very paranoid about succession planning, making sure that when people got promoted, that the first question was not, are they technically really good at what they're doing, whether it be in a store or a store support center, even our headquarters, if you will. We always call them store support centers because they were there to support the stores that were supporting our customers. But the key was, do they understand it? And so understand our value set and do they live it? If they live it, they had a chance to move ahead, become a store manager, become a district manager, whatever it may be. If they didn't, it didn't mean they were a bad person, but we put them in another area where their ability to affect large numbers of people was not going to be as great. So that ability to understand and live our values and become a role model and lead by example is one of our core values, lead by example. So you saw last night that I served pie. So, this is maybe off the subject a little bit, but the example is it's important. It's not just important. I do it at Mountain Sky as well. Our guest ranch open to the public because, I want the guests to really see me in a position of service to others. I want our associates to see that. It's not just a bunch of words. It's actually leading by example. There's nothing that I wouldn't do to help. Last year at Mountain Sky, I was sitting in the bar area and having a drink, and I heard somebody say, "Well, our bathroom is not working, and it's over there." I said, "Yeah." So I went and I fixed it myself, and there was another one that wasn't working. I fixed it myself. So, I came back. I just, that's kind of my nature. It's not working. Go fix it. It's not a matter of title of who I am. I didn't ask anybody else to do it. I did it myself. So the associates the next day, I had a couple say to me, "We heard that you actually were fixing toilets yesterday." I said, "Well, yeah, it wasn't, it's part of what we do is that we have to lead by example." And those storytelling, those examples, and picking the right people behind that understand those things and live those things are the way you expand an organization over a broader scale. If you have really bright people, they don't get what you're doing, they don't get your purpose and your vision, then it's not going to work. Doesn't mean they're not bright, doesn't mean they're not good, doesn't mean they don't have a different purpose in life, but they're not going to be able to support your organization. Yeah. So, much of what you're doing and expanding it so incredibly in the last 3 years, you have to have the right people around you, people who understand Jay Shetty, people who understand your value set, I mean, they can have their own, but it has to be, in a certain sense, has to have sense of service and sense of purpose deeply ingrained as well.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
And thank you so much. That was a beautiful answer, by the way. And amazing to hear that you were fixing toilets, and definitely saw you set pie yesterday.
Yeah.
But no, I think it's amazing, and I've definitely felt that with you personally this week, just how personal you are with everyone, and how much you make sure and check in with everyone, and making sure we're all okay, which has really been beautiful and very, very amazing to see that as well. And that answer was amazing, because for me, that is what defines leadership. When I meet someone, I'm most endeared by their humility and by their character more than how much money they've made or how successful they are. And I think that's all of us. We remember people based on how they make us feel, as opposed to what they have or what they say. And I think the fact that you've been able to do that in an organization, tell me about a time, Arthur, where actually you may have made a mistake or a failure in the organization, and I'm sure there were many, but any that stand out to you where you really learned an important lesson that stayed with you, that made you change something.
I hope there weren't too many, but there were some. I'll give you an example, and this was one at Home Depot as an example. The only acquisition we made when I was there and Bernie was there was a group of 9 stores that were in our industry. They had stores in Dallas and elsewhere in Louisiana and Mobile and Baton Rouge, et cetera. And so we acquired the stores, and then what our decision was that we didn't want to lose the volume that they had. It was a fraction of the volume that we had, but we didn't want to lose the volume. We were very paranoid about losing volume, focused always on revenue. And so we decided to keep them open and change the stores. So it really was kind of like changing tires on a car that's going, even 30 miles an hour. It gets very ugly, very difficult to do, et cetera, et cetera. So when we reopened the stores, we realized we had, physically, we had changed the stores. They looked like traditional Home Depot stores, great stores. But the associates didn't really get us, because we hadn't really put them through the kind of training and exposure and understanding that was critical to all of our associates. So there was a separation there from, our value set, which drives everything, to the people that were serving the customers who, were well-intended, but they didn't understand our priorities. They understood the traditional priorities, which was not as rigorous about customer service as ours was. So we ended up closing those stores for a short while and, putting everything on pause, taking all the associates, training them, doing everything we had to do, et cetera, et cetera. When they reopened as our Home Depot store. So I think that was an example of where we got a little ahead of ourselves. And probably, forgot to check certain boxes that we needed to check. Another example, and both in our PGA business today is a good example. We're expanding at about 1 million square feet in golf retail in the next 5 years, which is, there's nobody in golf retail expanding anywhere. And people you talk to say, but it's been extraordinarily successful. But the point is that those stores require a high level of service and people understanding the industry, club fitting, ball fitting, et cetera, and relationships to customers, et cetera. So to our guests in the store. So, we take a lot of time now in moving a large group of people to the new store to make sure that we don't make that mistake again. So those number of people can train the additional 40, 50, 60 people that we're hiring and making sure that they get our culture. So, culture really drives everything that we do. I mean, everything we do, those value sets, they drive everything that we do. And, the body can only absorb change at a certain rate and pace at a certain rate. So I think it's important to be able to acknowledge that and make sure that, whatever your culture is, it doesn't get diluted as you expand. More often than not, it does happen. I've had some experiences, and one other example of that, when we went at Home Depot, when we started to expand into the Middle West, we went to Detroit with a group of stores, and we realized then we were opening up stores. We had a store every day and a half, and that we couldn't really sustain that rate of growth. So we went to the board, Bernie and I, and we said, look, we've decided we're going to maintain a growth rate of no more than 25% a year. It had nothing to do with financial modeling and everything. It had to do with how many associates could we impact, hire, impact, train, make sure they understood our orientation, became Home Depot fanatics, blood orange, all those things we asked them to do. We said that's the most that we can possibly do. So we we kept our growth down to a point that we can still produce the kind of success and deliver the kind of experiences in all of our businesses.
Yeah.
Same thing happens out here at the ranch, is that we've made some adjustments over the years. We do it very slowly, very modestly, because we don't want the experience to change, and we want to make sure that everybody's ready for the change.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's amazing advice for all of us. Anyone who's listening or watching right now and is growing a small team into a larger one, an entrepreneur that's expanding their business. Right. Culture is that thing that's going to make sure that you succeed in the long run. Yeah. And it's so easy to hire fast and hire quickly. Right. And I know Alex and I, and with the businesses that I work with right now, we're actually some of the slowest hiring people in the world.
Well, and it's terribly important. I mean, I had a CEO of a major competitor of ours meet with me once. I was actually playing golf over at Augusta as a guest, and he was there. And he said to me, well, if you're here around lunchtime, I'm out on the putting green, and, come over, say hi. And I knew him. So I did. So, and he had left the company at that point. And he said, we probably visited 200 of your stores a year. And at that point in time, we had stores in Chile as well. He said, and we could copy everything. We could copy the size, the pricing, the assortment, the signing, everything. He said, we'd go around and ask people, this culture thing, value thing, and no matter where we went, no matter who we spoke to, they all said the same thing in their own words, but they all were doing the same thing. And we were not able to do that in our company. Wow. And but that's because, we recognized the importance in that. It was not a new message every single day. It was the same messages over and over and over and over again, to the point people said, oh boy, here we go again. listen to customer service. And every example that we could find of great customer service, we celebrated that. We had issues with, that we had to struggle with as well as a company, but we celebrated the successes, and particularly it weren't successes in how many stores we opened up. The fact that our earnings per share grew at 49% a year for 23 years, our stock grew that quickly. We didn't talk about the stock market and how wealthy we're making people, though we had a lot of pride in that, because then we gave other people the financial capacity to make a difference in their own lives and have a financial purpose in their lives and taking care of their family, extended family, community, giving back. But so it's a beautiful model, because it's one where associates and who you're serving all appreciate the investment you've made in doing the right things for the right reasons.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And like you said earlier, the Arthur M. Blank Family Foundation has given $400 million since 1995 to so many incredible ventures, and many of them have been in the space of childhood development, education and the arts, and parks and green space. And I wanted to know why you specifically selected each of those three. Mm-hmm. They're so beautiful in their own right, but I'd love to know from your own perspective as to why you believe those three areas are so important.
Well, I think, anything, it doesn't have to be in Montana, obviously, because most people don't live here, but, anything connected to green space, to parks, to nature, to getting outside, to finding that solitude, that quietness, that place where you can reflect, and a place where you can, go with family and friends and experience things that aren't driven by, on my phone every 3.5 minutes or less. So I think that, that's an area that we've always felt very, very strongly about. Obviously, we're involved in conservation here in Montana as well, and elsewhere in the West. So it's not just these two ranches, which we think are models in terms of ranches should operate, not just from a guest standpoint, but from, in terms of the actual ag process that we have going on. So we've always felt strongly about that, being outside, being connected to nature, being connected to people that you're outside with. It opens up a different perspective on viewing the world and viewing each other, and having that sense of community. A sense of community is so important. I was raised in an apartment house, and as well the rest of my family. But what's interesting is that in those apartment houses, when it was during the summer, when it was warm, or even in the fall and spring, it was in New York City, people would bring their little chairs downstairs, and everybody would sit like outside the apartment, because they had that, that need, desire for connection to others. And I think that's true whether you're living in an apartment or whether you're living in a home or whether you're living. So we at our ranches, we don't promote the use of technology. Sorry, Jay. Apologize for that. But I mean, you know, there are places where people can use technology because of conferences and other work, but we don't actively promote it. We want people to get outside. We want people to experience nature. We want people to touch and feel things, and that silence and that solitude and that, you know, finding that quietness with themselves, that inner calm, which they can do so beautifully in nature. Public education has always been a big issue for me. I went through public school my whole life. Didn't go to private school until I went to college. I went to small business school, Babson College out of Boston. And so I feel like, you know, the more that we can do in terms of public education at a higher level creates, you know, really unlocks minds of all of our young people, that exposure. Thomas Friedman was right many years ago when he wrote his book, The World is Flat. And I think we're realizing that more and more and more over time. The book's 25 years old, but reality is that we're seeing that every day. It's becoming less curved and more flat, and everybody is connected. And I think, you know, that's a wonderful thing. So I think, you know, public education, because not everybody or very few people can afford, you know, private schools and, you know, kind of an answer that's just works for a handful of people relatively. So that's always been very important to my family and my children as well. And they're very actively involved in that arena. So those are some of the things. We do a lot of work in areas of culture because we think culture is another way. There's a lot of times there's too much of an emphasis, in my opinion, on book learning and what have you. And some people learn differently. They learn by expressing themselves through yoga, through arts, through athletics, through whatever it may be, music, drama. And so I think you have to let people kind of find themselves in those ways as well. Sadly, within the public education area, a lot of those opportunities for expression have been cut back and eliminated. So we'd like to see more of that expanded over time because I think it's very healthy for everybody.
Yeah, I love that how you've chosen 3 things that encourage so much internal growth.
Right.
Like I feel like your investment in parks and green spaces is about people finding internal calm. Right. And even this week, we've had all these incredible outdoor activities that you've arranged and the team's arranged here for everyone to partake in. And we've seen how people are bonding closer when they're out and about in green spaces and outdoors and going on these beautiful walks and riding or whatever else it may be. Right. And especially what you're speaking about, the education system, of course. And then I think you're spot on when you talk about how the arts allow us to express ourselves more effectively and how that's never always encouraged. Right. And so your investment in that space, I'm sure, has made a big difference. Well, I think,
you know, as you know, and many of our guests know that, you know, that education, you know, the book education is very important. The life education is in many cases even more important than exposure and what have you. It's one of the reasons our foundation has just started to invest on an international basis. We're doing work in Africa, doing work in the Caribbean, et cetera. But one of the reasons is not because, you know, I mean, we don't have enough opportunities within the United States. We do, and needs we do. But I wanted to send an important message, you know, to our family and to our associates is that, you know, not just talking about, you know, humankind being connected, but actually demonstrate that. So, in the case of Nigeria, where 60% of the population lives on less than $1 a day, you know, we want people to be aware of that. And, you know, how do we participate and support answers in those areas of the world? So I think that the notion that we are brothers keepers, which is an integral part of our faith and the faith of, you know, part of everybody's faiths, I believe, is very important. And it's not just, it starts maybe with your family, your extended family, your community, but it really has to include everybody on the face of the earth. That's why the earth is important. You know, the earth is important because we all live here, because we got to take care of it a little better than we have been.
Absolutely. That resonates so strongly with me because one of the reasons why I became a monk and one of our teachings was that you became a monk and you were free from your basic family responsibilities so that you could see the whole world as your family. Right. And so that you could go and extend yourself even further. Right, yeah. And I think it's beautiful to see you do that. I mean, you have 6 children and six grandchildren. 6 grandchildren.
6 and 6, right?
Yeah, 6 and 6. Yeah. What is the
and
legacy?
Several dogs. A couple of dogs as well. Yeah.
Amazing. And horses.
And horses, yes.
What are the what is the legacy that you're hoping that they're going to carry forward to the future generations as the foundation grows?
Well,
and the
I
work
don't,
grows?
I think it's important for them to find themselves. They need to climb their own mountains. They need to explore themselves. They need to, fall down and pick themselves up. They need to learn deal with adversity and growth, both physically and personally. So our older children are all involved in our family foundation, and all actively involved in a variety of areas that we've talked about. Many we haven't, but they're involved in all of them. In addition to that, each one is starting their own foundation now, much smaller, but I want to make sure they know how to evaluate, make sure they know how to do their work, et cetera, because when you're giving, you're always getting more. I mean, it makes no difference whether it's physical work or financial, whatever it may be. The more we give, the more we get back. That's just kind of the way the math of the world works, the universe and our soul works. So the younger children have age-appropriate exposure to philanthropy. One's 22, two are 18, so they're younger, but they're getting exposed to it, mostly by doing, not by writing checks, but by doing things and being connected in service in a variety of ways. And they're interested in all of our businesses as well. But, bringing them along very slowly and making sure they understand our values, that nothing is going to be given to them. Whatever they get has to be earned, and earned primarily through understanding these values, living these values, being a great role model, caring about community, caring about others, caring about service, caring about purpose. And, my hope, my desire as a parent is that, the children will grow when I'm long gone, and they will have their own set of values, the values hopefully they've learned from their mothers and their father. And they'll continue to do, the work that we're doing today and expand it. I mean, I don't have a written set of things. These are the 7 things we're going to do after I'm gone. So I'm not going to manage my foundation from my grave. I have enough faith in my children, and they'll make the right decisions based on the passions they know their father has, their own passions, which are critical. So they're really feeling they're doing the work that's important to them, and that they are doing work that's important in terms of the times that we're facing. So this well-being, wellness, well-being notion is at a critical mass, today in our country, if not the world, but certainly in our country. Whether it be the rate of suicides, which continue to climb at dramatic rates, which affect, the veteran population, a very young population, 10 to 14, and is double what it is on a national basis. So there are, those serious issues we're facing today, they'll have other maybe issues in the future. And so whatever they are, they should feel, the passion, the drive to want to make a difference in those areas, and put themselves and resources in place to help others, come to a better conclusion that whatever it may be.
Absolutely. And I've read that your favorite quote on a t-shirt is that there is no finish line. The Wi-Fi here is called finish line, no finish line too. What does that mean to you? And also, what is the personal work you're doing right now in that regard? What are the internal things that you're working on at this stage in your life?
Well, I think, it came to me primarily from my running initially. I ran competitively, and Nike had this T-shirt, so there was no finish line. There was a guy running in the woods, and couldn't find another one of them. I saw it someplace. Phil Knight was kind enough from Nike, was kind enough to get me one of the shirts. And, and I think in virtually all areas of my life, I understand that, the next day isn't necessarily the end. There's always more to do, and et cetera, et cetera. And I think you have to have the ability to deal with adversity, grit, bounce back, and continue putting one step in front of the other. I got that from my long distance running. You probably got that from your monkhood, and maybe athletics as well, and other areas of your life. But the ability to understand that these problems that we're facing are not, you're not in and out in 5 or 10, 15 minutes. It's not a transaction. It's about relationships. All of our businesses are that way. It's never about the transaction. It's always about the relationship. So these causes, these issues that we have today in our country and worldwide are not going to go away tomorrow. So we have to have the wisdom to understand that. We also have to have the tenacity to say, we're going to make a dent and we're going to make a difference, just as my mother said in the bracelet I'm wearing. but we're going to make a difference. And every day we're going to continue to strive to move forward and to make a difference in that area. So I think, it's important. I think my oldest daughter would say, Dad, that, I love the expression, I love the feeling, but, which brings me back to myself a little bit. She said, but at some point, in your life, you need to be able to say that I'm kind of you need to be at peace with where you are. And that's where I think my version of wellness and well-being has changed, because it used to be running 7 days a week. If I didn't do that, that was my design around fitness and well-being. In many ways, physical fitness is important. But I think the whole notion of trying to dig deeper and really understand myself and my real purpose, and are we connecting the dots as well as we can, taking time for myself to every day to do meditation. I need to get back on that horse again. I did it for a number of months with, I got encouragement by Deepak Chopra, but I need to get back on and do it again, because I saw the value of that, for a very long period of time. The work I do in terms of yoga and just the quietness, living in a quiet space and taking time to reflect. And it's one of the reasons I love Montana. We come out here and we walk, we hike, whatever it may be, horseback ride, and see this beautiful scenery, but it's quiet time. So the ability to be calm, the ability to reflect, the ability to build that into my life every day, where I'm not kind of a gerbil on the wheel, which is constantly running, the ability to get off that that cycle and pause, reflect, understand, build back my strength, my vision. I think that's been an important part of my own personal growth. That part of it didn't take place until, probably just maybe 4 or 5 years ago, I think, when I began to think more about, in a broader sense, a deeper sense, purpose and service to others. A good example of how we can connect, a great business to doing the right things for the right reasons. We built a new stadium in Atlanta, Georgia, the Mercedes-Benz Stadium, voted the best sports facility in the United States in the last 2 years and maybe in the world. But it's built in downtown Atlanta, which is magnificent today, but there's a part of downtown Atlanta, the west side of Atlanta, which is the birthplace of Dr. King, birthplace of many civil rights leaders, that has gone, downhill for the last 30 years. Unlike most other areas in Atlanta, when I moved there were 1 million people. Now there are over 7 million people living in Atlanta. And so we set out from the very beginning with saying, look, we're going to build the best stadium in the world that's designed around the people that we're serving, the guests that are in the stadium. There's no question we're going to be 100% successful at that. And I met with a lot of people from the religious community who said, I said, well, how does this create a situation where we can create a rising tide will float all boats, all these communities that are connected to our stadium, but have fallen backwards, slid backwards. And they said, it's not about buildings, it's about, human capital. So we spent 3 years, actually, because one of our key components of our values is to listen, to listen and respond, whether it be people who are serving in our businesses or people who are serving through the foundation. So we walked the streets of the West Side, met with neighborhood groups, and, basically didn't say very much. We just said, look, we're going to build this magnificent stadium. We want it to be a positive force in your lives. We're done talking. Now you tell us, what is it that's important to you? What's important to your community? What's important to your family, et cetera, et cetera. And, it wasn't a list of 100 things. It was a list of 4, 5, 6 things that were really critical to them. And so we made it clear from the very beginning that, the stadium project will take us 7 years from the design, the thinking about the structure, et cetera, to building it. But this is going to be a 20, 30-year process. That's where there is no finish line kind of fits in as well. And so we spent a great deal of time listening and then responding. And one good example is a program called What West Side Works. One of the things that everybody said in the community, we need jobs. We don't have jobs, and that affects us in a whole variety of ways. So we trained. We had over half the people living in those zip codes applied for this program called West Side Works. We've taken in probably close to 1,000 have been trained, and the training really is to give them the life skills and the work skills so they can be successful, not just on one project. So whether it be in construction or food or baking or nursing or IT, whatever it may be, whatever their interest was, we did all that training, and then we put them to work. So a lot of these training programs where they fall down is that they train them, but they don't make the connection to it. They need a job. I really need a job. So our notion was every single person who graduated this program was going to actually have a paying job and what have you. So, Amazing. When whoever it may be went back in their house, and it was one individual I remember, his name was Lloyd. It was a great story about he was a tattoo artist, and he had 3 children, single father. And, because of the nature of what he was doing, he wouldn't be home in the evening. So his kids would go to school, come home. He was not home. He was out, doing his trade. And so he went through this, became part of the construction crew that helped build the stadium, and now was working with construction in a variety of other areas. But he had a regular job, came to work at 8 in the morning, worked till 4, 3, 5 in the afternoon, whatever it may be. Then he was home in the evening. So he was making money. He was walking in the door. His chest was, out. His shoulders were back. Smile on his face. His kids said, it's not just financially, but his ability, self-confidence, and his ability to say, I can make a difference not only in my life but now in their lives. That story was told probably 1,000 times over on the West Side, and that's we understand it's a longer journey. We understand human capital and human capacity takes time to nurture and to help grow. But we're equally committed to that, and that's true with all this community work that we do. We try to identify not what we see, as the needs, is really what the needs are by the people that are living these communities.
Yes.
Sometimes foundations make a mistake, and they operate, say, from Atlanta, and they throw Scud missiles here, there, and elsewhere. Good works, I should say, here, there, and elsewhere, but they don't really understand the pulse on the ground. What's actually happening? What does it mean to live that way? And so we spent a lot of time, most of our time, in starting our evaluation work by understanding what is it that the people that we're serving, what is it that they're saying, not what we're saying, what are they saying, where do they feel that they need help and support. And obviously we're trying to, teach people to fish versus, giving them fish. And so that's one example of a beautiful story that found business model that was fabulously successful, but a community involvement that's been incredibly successful as well. So we make emphasis there on education, on health, on their financial services to understand what loans mean, how do you pay them off, how do you do a variety of things, financial planning, et cetera. So that's just one example, but there are many, many other examples of that. But and it's this connection of between those kind of things give our associates a tremendous sense of fulfillment and purpose in their own lives, because they see I'm part of an organization. It's not just about how many medals, how many awards, how many wins, how many whatever it may be. It's about how do we win the Super Bowl of life every year, which I tell our football players. So you have 11 guys on the other side of the line. You may not win the Super Bowl every year or the MLS Cup every year, but we can win the Super Bowl of life every year, because there's nobody on the other side of the line, defending us from doing that. So we see the opportunities, our players, coaches, staff, organization, and they have a tremendous sense of pride in that.
Yes.
The whole issue of social justice in the NFL today, which has been incredibly important. We've been very heavily engaged at both at the league level, but at the club level. So at the club level, we have 12, 15 players who we spent, 3 months with them, listening to them, telling us, look, this is what's going on in my communities. This is what I had to live with as a child. This is what I had to overcome. This is what my parents still live with, my siblings, whatever it may be. And so then we responded, in terms of our engagement with them. So it's not like us doing for them. It's us doing alongside them, connected to them, shoulder to shoulder, where they feel like, we're in this together. And that's a beautiful thing to happen. And I think, we want our associates to feel that sense of pride, feel that sense of this organization really has a heart and a soul and a purpose to it. And the beauty is you do all these wonderful things behaviorally, and you're going to produce the right financial results. I mean, it's important to do that, because in my case, because we want to continue to fund things that we see opportunities for. So
That's phenomenal. Thank you for sharing that.
Well,
It's
thank
really
you, Jay,
powerful.
for
Glad we
asking,
did
and
that.
thank you for listening.
No, of course.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I wish I could get more to the point as you do so
No,
beautifully. A lot of your
it's
messages,
great. No, but it's powerful
So-
work. You're doing the work. I think detail is great when people are able to see how deep the intention is.
Right.
In the sense that I feel like when you're explaining something, you're not just explaining what you're doing, you're explaining why you're doing it and how you're doing it.
Right.
It's going to take longer.
So
Makes sense.
the what is the easiest part. It's the why. I mean, that's what's sustainable in the heart and the spirit and the soul, is that when we understand it, our foundation, our associates, some of our businesses understand why we're doing the things we're doing, it makes a difference in their lives as well. And
100%.
and they feel like, because this whole estate's being recycled back, they're working not only to have purpose in terms of who we're serving, but they're working in terms of having purpose in building the foundation, which will be, recycled in a positive way. So
Absolutely.
it's a beautiful circle that's very, very tight, and there are really no breaks in it.
Yeah.
So it's a beautiful thing to be part of.
Amazing. Arthur, you've been incredible. We end every interview with what we call the final 5 quick fire, rapid fire round. So you can only answer the questions with one word or maximum one sentence.
I need a glass of water for that. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so what I've done is we've created, considering your name is Arthur Blank, we've done this final 5 as fill in the blanks. So I'm going to ask you. I can drop that for you. So I'm going to ask you to fill in the blank at the end of the sentence.
The hardest thing for me is the one word, as you know now.
Yes.
I tend to give long answers.
That's fine. So that's why this section is for that.
Yeah.
So the first question is, the best advice I've ever received is blank. So what would it be? Finish the sentence. The best advice I've ever
Be
received.
true to my values.
Okay, wonderful. The second question is, the worst advice I've ever received is blank.
I would say, focus, the focus on, productivity, the focus on financial metrics, as being the goal. Whole versus all the other things in terms of behavior and changing people's lives in a positive way and seeing the joy in that. That's been great.
Great answer. Okay, question number 3. 3 things I'm grateful for are blank.
Well, I have to start with my family. Six great children, 6 great grandchildren, and great. I've been married multiple times, unfortunately, but I have a great relationship with all of my ex-wives, and they're all wonderful people. And so I'd say my family and my relationships. I think my ability, as a result of our business success, to try to have an opportunity to expand, what service means of others, create that with our associates and who we're serving in all of our different businesses.
Yeah. Do this one blank thing and it will change your life. What would you put into that blank? What would that one thing be?
Find your passion, because I think when somebody, can I add on another word or two?
Yeah, please. Yeah, of course you can. I'm going to, absolutely, please.
Because I think when people find their passion and their purpose, financially they're going to do as well, if not better, than they ever would have done doing anything else. And, their years here, which are, limited, they're measured, if you will, are going to be much more enriched because they're going to feel like what I'm doing what I'm really doing as purpose for me and purpose for others that I'm trying to serve. And so I think finding purpose, which is not always easy. I mean, sometimes people wander around a bit. You did. You described your journey, and myself as well. I had my own journeys there. But when you find it, you need to stop and honor it, and then to move with it. And all good things come as a result of that. In terms of the quality of life.
Absolutely. And the fifth and final question is the one thing that you're hoping this beautiful 4 or 5 days we've had here in Montana will result in?
Well, I think there are two things, if I expand the question a little bit. One is that, the great connections that you have made with so many other people here, and they've made with you and with each other. I think so. I think those physical connections, emotional, it's one thing to know somebody, but when you spend 4 days together in this setting, you get a deeper understanding of people's perspectives and their views, and how can we work together. They're 2 and 2 equals 8 and 10 instead of just 4 or 5 for myself. So I think that has been very invaluable. The other thing is that I think we'll be able to focus for our foundation and draw in other foundations and other institutions that care about these things. Some really good ideas to help support the expansion of the notion of well-being and wellness, and give exposure to that to other populations that don't necessarily have that or see that, and to not have this widen this gap that we have in America today is just too extreme in my viewpoint. And I think we need to do more of this and bring people together, not necessarily economically as equals, because that's not reality in a capitalistic world. But, to bring people together in terms of their well-being and their happiness and their ability to feel fulfilled in life. So we want to, get in the canoe and paddle along with everybody else, and paddle as hard as everybody else, and know we can make a difference, and try to earn, the respect and the opportunity. It's an honor really having everybody here. From my standpoint, it's an overwhelming honor to have not just the intelligence in the room, but the commitment and the sense of purpose and the sense of trying to reach out and make a difference in the world is incredible to me. So anything we can do, supporting the collaborations, supporting the partnerships, new ideas, expanding ideas, scaling up ventures, et cetera, which is much of what I know your concern is going forward. How do I impact more people, which is great. We want to be part of that. So it's been an honor for me, truly an honor for me to be here this week and to just be part of this. It's an experience of my lifetime I'll never forget. I've gotten a great deal out of it, much more than, I've gotten much more out of it than we put into it. And that's the beauty of when you do things with service and purpose, you really do get more out of it than what you give.
Yeah, well, I want to thank you on behalf of me and all the other participants, because I think you've allowed us to form such deep, amazing relationships. Yeah. There's many people in this room that I would have loved to connect with or meet. And you're so right that when you go away with people for 3-4 days, you go so much deeper, so much quicker than you would if you met at a conference or a one-day event or whatever it may be. So I just want to say thank you
You're welcome.
From me. Thank you for all your kindness. Thank you for your encouragement.
Thank you.
You've given me so many wonderful votes of confidence this week, and just sharing so much support and encouragement for the work I do, which has given me so much conviction. Yeah. And I'm very grateful for that.
Thank you. Well, the work that you do is incredible, and it really has, tremendous purpose to it, and a high degree of success. So I want to do everything we can do to help support you and support the people you're touching and trying to help with their life journeys. So I think this is a great place to do it, because when you spend time outdoors, you realize you're kind of dwarfed by nature and by things that have been here for thousands and thousands of years. And also, everybody puts on their pants the same way. It's a level playing field. Nobody's wearing suits. Nobody's wearing ties. Everybody's just, being themselves, and they're opening themselves up. And in this kind of environment, it's easier to do that. Yes. And so that's the reason we want to continue to do this work here.
Absolutely. Thank you again, Arthur.
Thank
Thank
you,
you,
Jay.
everyone who's been watching or listening back at home or wherever you've been. Make sure you go and follow the Blank Foundation on Instagram and on Twitter and on the social media platforms as well if you want to find out about the great work not only we've been doing, but all the other incredible work that the Arthur M. Blank Family Foundation does. Please check out this podcast. Share it with other people that you feel are going to benefit from this incredible presence around service, incredible presence around giving and doing through our work. And for anyone who's aspiring to be an entrepreneur out there, what better values than the ones that have been talked about in this show? Make sure you share those on Instagram so that I can share them as well. I'm always looking through what you're learning so that helps me ask better questions and serve you better.